Okay, we're talking to Norman Shillman and Joy Shillman.
Hi, we're here.
Ladies first.
Oh, well, I'm reading the paper. Okay. Okay, what is your birth name and your Hebrew name?
You're first. Oh, I'm first. Oh, I only go by Joy Shillman. I've never gone by Sandra Joy Shillman. The Hebrew name is Cheryl.
Okay. And Dad?
Nochum, or Nochum Zundel is my Hebrew name, but mostly Nochum.
Well, what's the Zundel part?
I don't know, I was sometime told I had a middle name or something like that. I don't know.
Never did.
Okay. And your birth name is just Norman Shillman, no,
Yeah, never got a middle
no
name.
middle name.
I somehow deprived of that in my youth.
And Mom, you did say your name was Sandra Joy Shillman. Did you say that?
Yes, but I only go by Joy Shillman my whole
And
life.
why have you always gone by just Joy, not Sandra?
Because my sister's names are Gay and Hope. I don't know. Gay.
Okay.
It was Estelle Gay, but we only called her Gay.
Was that your decision to go by Joy instead of
My
Sandra?
mother's.
Okay. And who were you named after?
My mother's mother, it was my grandmother who died when my grandmother was 29 when she died. I never knew her. She died when my mother was a baby, so my mother never really knew her mother.
And what was her name?
I don't know. They said either Sonia, Sadie, or Sophie. I don't
Okay.
know.
And how about you, Dad?
Dorman.
I was named after an uncle who I, of course, never knew because he was deceased.
And his name was?
Yeah, and also, my mother used to tell me a story that could be true or not. There was some movie actor that she sort of adored, and it was similar to Norman or whatever, so that's the name I got.
Okay. Do you know what your uncle's name was?
No.
And where and when were you born? You don't have to give a year.
Oh,
You don't have to say. You don't have to say 1935, for example.
March 14th, 1935, George Washington Hospital, Washington, D.C. Born and raised a native Washingtonian.
Still, is it still called George Washington Hospital?
Yeah.
George Washington University.
Yeah, but it's a newer building than the one I was born in.
So,
And how about you, Dad?
born in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Sinai Hospital on August 17th, 1927.
Okay, now we're going to move to your family, and tell us about your mother, and describe her personality.
Rose Dorman.
And we have only an hour, Mom.
I'll be quick. Rose Dorman Abrams. Her married name was Abrams. Her personality. She was very, very strong, overwhelming.
Overbearing.
Difficult.
Okay.
Emotionally abusive.
Hey, be honest.
But physically, she took very good care of us. She really did. She gave us a good home, clothes, good food, and when we were sick, she took good care of us. I have to give her credit for that.
So she was a good cook.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that she pushed your father to succeed.
Yeah, my father, was a lawyer, and when he was in his 30s, was asked to be a partner with some people in real estate because they trusted my father. He was very well thought of, but he tended to be more, as I was, more withdrawn, and my mother would push him to buy more, do more, and it helped. It helped make him even more successful. He was a good lawyer. He was very, very well trusted and respected.
Okay.
Finished.
All right, and how about you, Dad, about your mother?
My mother was from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, yeah, my mother was born, Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
Sorry.
Good,
Born
that's
and raised.
My
in
mother
poverty.
was the third of 5 children. Our parents were distantly related, and my mother was married at the age of 18, which was not unusual in those days, and she came to Baltimore where my father was living, and was a whole new world for her, being away from Brooklyn. And her mother-in-law and father-in-law lived down the street, so we were very close to the grandparents. But anyway, my mother, I was the second child. She was married at 18. My older sister Selma was born when my mother was 19, and I was born when my mother was 20. She was very sort of exact opposite of Joy's family. My mother was the quiet one, very much in stay at home. Her family, her children were the center of her universe. She was, I remember her reading to us and encouraging us. My mother was musically very talented. She was an excellent piano player, which is the reason why she had so many friends. And I guess I had almost an ideal childhood when I think back about it. But we thought that was normal, that everything was quiet around the house and Mom was always there.
And why did she move to Baltimore from Brooklyn?
Marriage.
Father.
Oh, just for marriage.
Can I say one more thing?
I know you want to go back to your...
My mother was trained at the Peabody. One of her uncles paid for her lessons because my mother was raised in abject poverty in downtown Baltimore. She trained at the Peabody in voice, and she had a beautiful soprano voice. She sang in church choirs and synagogue choirs or temple choirs and at weddings. And it's when my father met her. She was singing at a party in Baltimore. He was over here with his law school friends and met her. And she was singing here. Anyway, my mother was also gifted musically.
Okay. And do you know what part of Baltimore she grew up in?
Yeah, downtown in abject poverty in a rooming house on like Lombard Street. I don't know.
And Dad, how did your parents meet?
Their introduction, my two grandmothers were distantly related in the old country. And because when they came to America, the families would come to look up relatives who may have given them some start in life. And my mother's father was very successful in his business. So my father went up to New York looking for work, employment. And when he got there, grandfather realized as a young man had a future, and he had three girls and a son and a daughter. He had 4 daughters to marry off, so somehow he introduced him to the girls, and the 3 older girls were very close in age. And my father picked, he says, according to him, he picked the third one. He liked her maybe because of her musical talent or whatever. Not that the others weren't, but that was his choice.
Okay.
She was very nice, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to your mothers. Did either of your mothers work
No.
ever?
No, women didn't work in those days.
You know, my father was 15 when he went to college. When he graduated law school, he was so young. He couldn't take the bar till he turned 21, like maybe 6 months later. But he also worked his way through college and law school by selling shoes. And he always checked our shoes as we were growing up.
Well, we're moving to father, so stay with your father and talk about his personality.
Oh, such a nice man. Just the dearest, nicest man.
And what did he...
And fun.
And what did he do that was fun? What did he like to do?
Well, like on Sundays when he got home from playing golf, he would take us on Sunday drives, like Daddy Norman would say he did. And we would go driving through Rock Creek Park through the fjords where it's the water, and we'd all scream as the water hit us. If it's a car, well, once he got a convertible, and that was fun because we got all wet. But then the water would come in through the windows, and we used to have so much fun with him. And we'd all go riding, and then we'd have to come to Baltimore some Sundays and to visit my mother's family.
And that was not as enjoyable.
Oh, I loved it, but I don't think my father did. He was a good sport. We called it Baltapirky. We're going to Baltapirky.
And what about your...
And every time we went by Babe Ruth, where Babe Ruth lived in that orphanage, that Catholic orphanage, he'd always say, "That's Babe Ruth's birth. That's where Babe Ruth lived."
Right. What about your father's work? You mentioned he was a lawyer. Do you have any type of specialty?
No, in those days, no, it was a lot. You know, we did all kinds of estates, everything.
And
Divorce. I could tell you some stories. Wow.
Okay. And he also had other businesses, right?
Yes, he had. For a time, he had an insurance agency, and he had real estate from the time he was in his 30s.
Okay. And Dad, talk about your father.
My father was the youngest of three boys. But he was the leader of the family. Once he was very aggressive, assertive. He was an excellent salesman. He had his mannerisms, and he had the good looks. I often think of him as the Ronald Reagan of his time. He was very charming. Men liked him, looked up to him. Women thought he was absolutely the idol of their life. So he used his natural abilities to. He was a good salesman, and that's what he did most of his life. He went out and sold products, sold his services, etc., and that's what he made a living at. Unfortunately, shortly after I was born in 29 was the stock market crash. The 30s were the Depression years, so there were tough times all around. We'll talk about that later.
And what did he do for his?
He sold mostly things in the hand knitting industry. He started up his own company. He could never work for anybody else. He had to be his own boss, so he started his own company with some help from his father-in-law. And he was a jobber, a seller of hand knitting yarn. And his older brother worked with him, but my father definitely was the boss.
And he sold to retailers, large retailers?
Yeah, to mostly department stores and knit shops and things like that.
Okay. And next question is, of your parents, who were you closest to and why?
It's hard to say in those days because my mother was always home, but I think I was closest to my father because I think I was more like my father, and I just felt more comfortable, I think, with him. But it's hard to say really. But I felt close.
How about you, Dad?
Definitely closer to my mother when we were younger because she was home all the time, and whether it was school and school lunches or whatever, Mom was the one that was with us. But unfortunately, she died right after Joe and I were married,
So young.
and then I was in business with my father. So during from those years on, I traveled with him in business, etc. So naturally closer to him then. But I guess my personality was closer to my mother's overall.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I understood that my father was the boss, but he had some very high principles, and he lived by them. He was honest as the day long. His word was his bond, and he expected everybody else to live by those principles. But he was a realist, and he understood that some people don't live up to their words, etc. But he taught me a lot about the world as I grew older and older and so forth. So based on his business experience, I think I benefited very much so. And very, very much family oriented, very much so.
And you mentioned your mom passing away when she was young. Tell us when your parents passed away and how. What caused their death?
Well, she was young. I mean,
Very 49.
she was not quite 50 when she died. Died from cancer and terrible pain and so forth. So it's shattering when you lose parents that young.
What kind of cancer?
Ovarian and stomach.
Ovarian cancer.
Under stomach.
And what about, tell us about your other parents when they passed away and the cause.
Oh, my father was up in years. He had Alzheimer's, and in my mind, he had died 8 or 10 years earlier because there was no communication with him. So
How about you?
we used to visit him, but other than that, after a while didn't even know who I was.
He didn't know them.
How about you, Mom? Your parents?
My father died about 7 weeks after, or 8 weeks after he turned 70. and I remembered his 70th birthday on Hope's. Honey, we called him Honey, and Honey had some heart problems, mostly from smoking. He smoked constantly. And at Hope's, when she had a little get-together for his 70th, he came up to me and he said, "I can't believe the good Lord let me live 70, and 7 weeks later he died." That was hard. And then my mother died when she was 88, almost 89. The high blood pressure and diabetes. She was diabetes 2, late onset, when she was 75. Her kidneys failed and she died, but she was very alert until her last year. And then she was in assisted living with 24-hour aides.
What are some of your favorite happy memories when you think of each parent? Any particular trips or things that they did that made you happy?
Are you asking
Or
me?
both of you. I'm going to ask all these questions of both of you.
What with their parents? Fun?
What are some of your favorite happy memories of each parent? Well, you mentioned driving through.
Yeah, and on the golf course, I used to walk with the golf course with Honey. I think he wanted a boy when I was born, and my nicknames were Spike and Butch. It was very, very feminine. But anyway, and he would take me out on the golf course a lot, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was fun. And then he taught me to play golf, which I only played for a couple years when I was a teenager. I didn't love it, but I played it. And he was a very good tennis player too. He's a good athlete. And his handicap was 4. Golf handicap was 4, so he was very good. And I had happy memories of that, the sports with him. Took me to a couple baseball games, maybe 2 at the most, but I had fun with him. It was a lot of fun.
What about with your mother?
And I used to go down to his office and go through the trash cans. It was fun. My mother, fun. I had fun. She would drive us to Indian Springs Country Club and we'd go swimming. That was a lot of fun. And then she'd tell Honey to meet us there for dinner. So we really enjoyed that a lot with her. And fun.
That's okay. And then, so you guys were, your family was a member at
Indian
membership
Springs.
Okay. And how about you, Dad, with your mother and father? Specific happy memories?
I had a happy youth. I was not aware
too.
that was during the Depression years that we supposedly didn't do things that we were never hungry. We had all the basics, but we didn't go a lot of places or spend a lot of money, which we didn't have. My Uncle Nathan, my father's bachelor brother in those days, Uncle Nathan had a boat. And usually on Sundays, he would take us out. My parents brought the food, my mother brought the food, and we went out for the Maryland Yacht Club, which was closer in the city, and out to Fort Smallwood. We'd go swimming in the bay there. That was our recreation. It didn't belong to a pool in those days. And in our neighborhood, there were a lot of kids in our neighborhood. We played outside on the front porch. We had the huge front porches in Forest Park area of Baltimore. School was fun. Everything was fun. Eventually, I got a tricycle, and then eventually, I got bigger. I got a bicycle. That was once I got a bike. My gosh, I could travel all over the neighborhood, and had a lot of boy friends, kids my age, school age friends. So, and then we would go to New York twice a year to visit my mother's parents, family. And going to New York, to the big city in a train, my gosh, what a thrill that was. And on Saturday afternoons, it's summertime, not always, but my father would take me to Oriole Park. You get a hot dog and a Coke. Oh gosh, what a thrill that was. So, and Sunday night, Uncle Harry would bring us ice cream, because he could run faster than anybody else, so before the ice cream melted. But it was fun all over. No wants. So
How about you, Mom? What about
We had fun.
things that you did as a family?
Oh, we used to we went to Atlantic City a few times, and we'd take my cousin Lorraine from Baltimore. And one time we took the boat from Baltimore down to Virginia Beach. You came up to Baltimore, and you got on this like riverboat. You slept on it, and you went down to Virginia Beach, and we would take Cheryl, and we had fun doing that. And even sometimes we'd come over in the summer, and I'd either go out to my Uncle Martin's summer home, which was a huge home with a ballroom and a pool and a pond, and we'd swim in the pool. And my Uncle Gerson had like a shack on the Magathie, and we'd go down there and have picnics and swim in the Magathie before it was polluted. And my parents made it a lot of fun doing all that. Plus, when we had air raid drills in Washington, we had them a lot. I know we're going to talk about that later, but they would make that fun. They'd say, okay, girls, Gay and I, because Hope wasn't born till the very end of the war, like till VJ Day. We would go down to the recreation room, and Gay and I would hide under the ping pong table, and there was a bar down there and a little stage. My parents had first aid kit and all kinds of canned goods, but they'd make it a party so we wouldn't be frightened because the house had to be dark, and the recreation was all dark. But they made it fun. They made games. My mother, they played games with us, so we wouldn't be afraid.
And one thing,
Of course.
it reminded me in the summers from roughly age 7 to 10 or 11, I went to day camp. We had a bus picked us up, took us out to Pleasant Hill Camp, which is where Owings Mills is now. And that's when I learned to swim in the pool there and play with many kids of my age, etc. So that was most of my summer.